This track is amazing. It goes so hard. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I am Molly, and in this video I'm going to be talking about the album Eternal Blue by the Canadian metal band Spiritbox. Eternal Blue is the band's debut album, and it was released on September 17th of 2021, so it hasn't been out for very long. But the few times I've listened to this album, I absolutely loved it. It uses a lot of different sounds and effects and musical styles, but it blends it all together really well. And overall, I just thought Eternal Blue was a really solid debut album from this band. It thoroughly impressed me, and so I figured I would sit down and film a little review talking about this album. Now, before this album came out, the only single I had heard from it was Circle With Me, which I loved. I thought it was a great track, but I didn't really have any expectations about what the sound of this album would be. So when I finally sat down to listen to this when it was released, the first track, Sunkiller, just was totally unexpected, and it frankly blew my mind. Sunkiller, right off the bat, is probably one of, if not my favorite track on this whole album. It just has such a simmering start to it, and then when the chorus comes in, it just explodes with energy. It's such a menacing song too. And they kind of pull a Deftones here, where they do like the really loud, intense, really quiet moments on this track. You've got like the kind of simmering, quiet, whispered vocals at points, but then the really harsh, driving instrumentals come in, and it kind of gives off almost Gojira sounding vibes too on the instrumentals at certain points. And then by the track's end, when it just all comes together in this energetic finale, this track is just so good. I absolutely love it. What a start to this album. And then we move on to track 2, Hurt You, where they kind of just take the more aggressive elements of the first track and run with those. It's definitely a more in-your-face, loud song, whereas the first track, it kind of went back and forth more. But there's definitely still some change-up going on with the sound on Hurt You. You kind of have the more melodic choruses paired with the harsher sounding verses. And then again, at the ending, this track just gets so heavy and raw sounding. It's fantastic. It brings a lot of energy for sure. And again, it's just a great example of how they do the whole soft to harsh, light to dark thing with their sound. It works fantastically well here. Track 3, we move on to Yellowjacket. This is one of the few tracks on this album, I'll be honest, I'm not sold on. It's definitely more electronic sounding, which I'm not at all opposed to, but it's just at certain points for me a little bit lackluster. When the energy does come in on the instrumentals though, I really love this track. It's just the kind of electronic, more reined in verses I'm not quite sure about. I'm still kind of feeling this track out, and we'll see if it grows on me. But like I said, when they do bring the energy, this track has it in spades. And then again, with the build up and toward the end of this track, it's just fantastic on those more aggressive moments. And then track 4, we have The Summit. This one's a little bit more melodic, a little bit more restrained. Overall, across this album, but especially on certain tracks, The Summit being one of them, the really melodic vocals just flow so well over the harsh, kind of more raw, heavy instrumentals, and it's a really beautiful pairing. And The Summit is a great example of that. The vocals are more melodic sounding, but then in the background you have all of that heavy instrumentation going on, and it works really well. I love when The Summit just breaks into the chorus. It's definitely one of my favorite parts of this track. And there's still some slight electronic tones on this one as well, but they do a really great job of balancing the electronic with the soft melodic side to their sound, with the harsh kind of heavy metal dark side. They just blend it really well on this track. And then moving on to track 5, we have Secret Garden. This one's a little bit more restrained, a little bit more quiet sounding, you could say. And I love the kind of, I think it's guitar, but there's like this plucky sounding instrumentation going on that I find really interesting to listen to. It definitely stands out to me. It catches my attention. And there's definitely some slight holding absence vibes on this track for me. But yeah, Secret Garden, the instrumentals are what really stood out to me on this one, and just how it's just a softer song, which is kind of needed at certain points on this album. Okay, and then track 6, we have Silk in the Strings. This track is amazing. It goes so hard. I love how on this track it's so energetic and it's so in-your-face aggressive, but at certain points they just quiet it down a lot. And there's like these little quiet chunks sprinkled in here and there so that when the aggression does come out full force, it has so much more impact to it. I just absolutely loved the energy on this one, and it just is delivered with such force. Track 7 is Holy Roller. This is another favorite for sure. This one, they definitely do a great job fusing the electronic side of their sound with the metal side and the energy and aggression. It starts with kind of some electronic, distorted sounding vocals, and then when the instrumentals come in and they just bring all of that energy, it's amazing. It works really well. There's also like a little guitar riff going on at times on this track that is so catchy. And again, just paired with those electronic touches on this track, it just makes it really interesting to listen to. There's a lot of different dynamic sounds going on with this one, and they fuse a lot of different genres together into one, what I think is a pretty cohesive track. And then track 8 is the title track, Eternal Blue. This one is definitely more melodic. It is kind of a much needed break after Holy Roller and Silk in the Strings, which just go hard with the aggression. The instrumentals are significantly slowed down, but they still have that tone to them that has that driving sound, kind of again Gojira-like vibes at certain points. And then paired with the really beautiful melodic vocals, it's just a really calm, relaxing song, but they still carry that more aggressive side to their sound in it in very subtle ways with the instrumentation. Track 9 is We Live in a Strange World. This one is the other track on this album I'm not sure about. The verses almost give me very slight Billie Eilish sounding vibes. Again, they kind of embrace a slightly more electronic, experimental side to their sound, which I don't dislike. I'm just kind of unsure of it, to be honest. The choruses are very beautiful, a little bit more on the melodic side, and then around the halfway point of this track, I do definitely start to enjoy it more. It kind of breaks open into sound, and they just infuse it with a little bit more of that energy. Track 10, Halcyon, starts off with almost a industrial borderline 9-inch nails sound to it at the start before the vocals come in. And then we have the, again, more melodic vocals paired with the really harsh instrumentals going on here. They do a great job of combining that on this album. And then the bit toward the end of this track is fantastic. Just a great track. I definitely like this one. And then track 11 is Circle With Me. Like I said, this is the one single from this album I had heard before the album's release. I absolutely love this track. It is definitely one of my favorites from this album. And I love how minimalistic the verses are, but then the chorus comes in and it just delivers such intensity. It works great. And again, I love the combination of the vocals here. So the more melodic ones paired with the screaming intense ones, it just works so well. They balance it out really well. But yeah, I just love how flowy the vocals are and how the heavier instrumentation just provides such a great base for the more melodic vocals. But this track is great and I loved it the first time I heard it. It's kind of what made me intrigued to listen to this album. And then the final track on Eternal Blue is track 12, Constance. This one definitely slows things down a little bit. It still has that great, amazing power and energy to its sound though. There's definitely a soft, almost echoey sound to this track, and then they just kind of take that sound and expand it as the track continues, and then by the end of it, it's just this really grand, atmospheric sounding track that reminds me so much of Loath's 2020 album, I Let It In and It Took Everything. Definitely a similar vibe and a similar sound on this track compared to that album. But yeah, by the end of the track, Constance, it just gets so heavy, and then paired with the melodic vocals, again, it just works really, really well. So there you have it. That's my little rundown of Eternal Blue, the debut album from the metal band Spiritbox. Ultimately, this album really impressed me, especially for a debut album. I thought it was just extremely well done, and they infused so many different genres and sounds on this one. At times it reminded me of Gojira, at other times more of Loath's kind of atmospheric black metal-esque style. Definitely some slight similarities to like what Deftones does with the really intense, really subdued. But yeah, they just infused so much on this album. There's like a couple of tiny little lulls on this album for me, but overall, I thought it was fantastic and just super, super entertaining to listen to. As of right now, my top 3 tracks are probably the first one, Sunkiller. Fantastic. What a start to this album. I also love Circle With Me. That one is great. And I think maybe my favorite is Silk in the Strings. That one is so intense and aggressive and it brings the energy. I love that one. But yeah, overall, I was really impressed with this album and I thoroughly enjoyed listening to it. If you have heard it, let me know down in the comments what you think of Eternal Blue. And yeah, as usual, thank you all so much for watching. Stay tuned and I will see you in the next video.